having a laugh at the Project Arts Centre in Dublin. I'm Deirdre O'Kane, and joining me are three other women who are also passionate about comedy. So that's four funny females in the one room at the one time and not a token man in sight. There's probably some gender equality issue there, but guess what? We're going to ignore it. For the next half hour, we are going to ruby wax lyrical on every aspect of the comedy business in an attempt to figure out what being funny is all about. So who are my fabulously funny guests? In the red corner, one of my favourite Irish actresses. Later this year, you'll see her in an Irish movie, Handsome Devil, a film produced by someone in this very room. Would you please welcome, pity she's such a minger, Amy Huberman. My second guest is a comedy writer you will know well. Her writing for the stage includes hit shows Greener, October, Are You There, Garth, It's Me, Margaret, and Dandelions, three of which, oddly enough, starred myself. I recently discovered that the three sold-out runs of Dandelions at the Olympia sold more than 80,000 tickets, which made me think, why could we have not just done the one night in Croke Park? She is currently writing for RTE1's Callan's Kicks and is a panellist on Sean Hughes' Radio 1 show, Don't Quote Me. It's the one and it's the only Fiona Looney. And lastly, and I think this might be my favourite intro because I've been waiting to say this for a long time, directly from Sundance Film Festival, where she was presenting the most recent movie she produced, Paddy Brannock's Viva, which was shortlisted for a 2016 Foreign Language Oscar. Ladies and gentlemen from Treasure Entertainment, it's film producer Rebecca O'Flanagan. So that's the form of it done. I think I want to begin with saying, to the best of my knowledge, there isn't a course that you can do in comedy. So how did we all end up here? Amy, can I start with you? How did you get into comedy specifically?
You know, when I was thinking about what was that starting moment, and it came from such an uncool place. I remember being down in Wexford.
Yes, not that funny.
No, it's not. Already, it's not very funny.
Nothing against the good people of Wexford.
A summer holiday, and you know, we were down there for the summer, and I was about 15, and like a very uncool 15-year-old, I was still cycling around on the bike. You know, I wasn't hanging around in street corners looking cool. And my brother, who was a little bit older than me, was hanging around with this group of guys.
That'd be the very funny Mark Huberman.
Mark is very funny.
All the Hubermans are quite funny.
They were having none of me, and I was like, I need a game plan.
So it was boys?
They were boys, yeah.
That's why you developed the funny to get the boys?
Well, this specifically, it was like, I need to up my game. I need to up my game massively.
Because I've only ever heard about boys getting into comedy to get the girls. So you might well be the first female I've heard. I got into it for the men.
You did
land a good one in the end, to be fair to you.
I did. But I remember that at that time I was like, I don't know what to do here. I'm not cool enough. And it was when Friends had just started, and in my head I was just like, it's so good. If they haven't seen it, if I manage to just remember all the best lines and just, you know, deliver them in like Wexford context of going down to the shop and getting chips, I will win their hearts. Oh, it didn't work actually.
But now that Friends was a big influence.
It was a bit, it was.
You did learn it off and tried to quote lines from it. Did either of the other of you? Did you learn lines? Did you study any other films? Did you quote lines from anything?
Certainly. I don't know if I had done it in the same way to quote, but there were comedy films that I watched over and over and over again that I could do verbatim. We were talking about it earlier. Tootsie was certainly one that I could still, I'd say, watch 3 times a year. But
how far back you want me, Florida?
Yeah, and there was so many of those that, you know, but like my taste was very mainstream or lowbrow. I remember first seeing Cannonball Run, and apart from really fancying Burt Reynolds, I just thought this is absolutely hilarious. So there was a lot of those kind of American mainstream movies that...
So there are moments that we all have where you go, oh, I'm connecting to that. That's very funny. I'd like to be a part of that somehow. Fiona, did you have a memory?
Yeah, I mean, I actually... It's funny because I hadn't remembered this until you were saying about the Friends thing. My brother and I learnt off the entire Airplane movies, the two of them. Yes. And we would just quote them back and forward to each other, like just to amuse ourselves, like for nobody else in the world. You know, certainly in our house, looking back, we grew up in a funny household. We didn't know it at the time. You know, you didn't go in every day and go, well, we're gas, you know, and and now it's your turn.
But you might have known that you were funny. I do remember thinking that our house was funny, you know, that there was a lot of funny chat around the table. And I noticed that everybody else's house wasn't quite as funny.
Yeah,
did you have that? Because I think maybe it has to come from a parent. Who was funny? Did you have a parent who was
My
funny?
dad was a great sort of Shanna Key. He had a lovely way of telling a story, and he had a great eye for the absurd humour. And I think he gifted that to different degrees to all of us, mostly to me, because my siblings just aren't
They're
nearly
not
as
funny.
funny as
You
me.
got the funny.
I would imagine you would have to go a long way to find somebody who is naturally funny, who didn't come from naturally funny.
Without some kind of
Yeah.
humour in their house. I
Yeah.
mean, Rebecca, you've got 5 sisters, is that right?
I've got 5 sisters, and I would say, I'm not quite in the same category as you, because I don't make comedy as I'm not claiming myself as funny, but I think what certainly had
We'll
come-
be the judge of that now. Judge of that. You are a comedy producer. It's
I am
very
a comedy,
valid.
and I feel I know comedy, but certainly what had come from my background was storytelling, same kind of thing. It wasn't necessarily just comedy. For me, it had always been storytelling, and that was too literature and poems and theatre as well.
And 2 of your sisters are in the business too.
Yeah, so 3 out of 6 of us kind of directly work in film. So
Have
it
you
was-
never thought
did
of
well.
producing Rebecca and her sisters?
Wait, we could do something like that. But I think what was interesting for me was, as I move forward and I have produced both drama and comedy, there's something special that happens when you get into working in comedy. There's something very specific about the collaborative process, which is very engaging and very addictive.
Yeah. So,
I think
a lot
there
of the
is-
time, it is meeting other funny people.
Absolutely.
Who have a similar
and recognising,
comedic outlook to yourself.
yeah, recognising that kind of comedic worldview, and it's
Yeah.
a very kind of bonding thing.
I think it is an addictive thing that you get such a buzz from, and like a lot of it is hard. Like it can be hard when it doesn't work, but when you do meet, because I guess because you need people to bounce off and you need people to laugh at your stuff, it does feel like a collaborative thing, unless you're doing stand up and but you still need
stand-ups. Yeah.
But it is so collaborative. So it like most things, or this specifically, it does very naturally evolve, because you kind of keep often meeting the same people and getting to work with the same people that you trust, that you've kind of got that a trust element that you to give yourself the realm
you
to be
certainly,
brave.
I think, have to be prepared to humiliate yourself
Absolutely.
publicly to a certain degree. And if you're in a room with people you like and who are on your wavelength, they will support you in that.
Yeah.
And they might slag you off, but they'll still help
Yeah.
you out. I think that's probably true to say, isn't it?
Yeah.
I had the great pleasure of actually working with Paul Rudd, who guested on Moonboy. Do you know who Paul Rudd is?
Yes.
Paul Rudd. He played Phoebe's boyfriend in Friends. And so speaking of heroes, comedy heroes, like I did get to meet and work with Paul Rudd, who was one of mine. Have you met any of yours, Amy? Did you?
Yeah, I met my comedy hero just last year. She's an American
Amy
comedian,
Poehler,
Amy
nothing
Poehler.
to bipolar. She's an actress, Saturday Night Live. She's presented the Golden Globes with Tina Fey. Do you know who I'm talking about? There's a hell of a lot of Amy's in the comedy business.
There's a lot of Amy's, but I had almost met her the year before at an audition, and I was so excited about it. I knew that the audition wasn't really going to land with anything, but I knew that
Presumably this is whilst doing pilot season
yeah,
in LA.
exactly. And I was so giddy. In my head, I was like, I know it won't go anywhere, but I kind of get to meet her and stuff. And it was, I geared myself up. It was a callback for it, and I learned my lines on my way. And it was my agent rang. It's like, it's been cancelled because they've cast the part.
God.
And
The pain.
it was
The pain.
the pain, and it was one of those moments where I succumbed to just this stereotype that we have of LA. I just walked the streets bawling, crying. So
Oh, I have a walking the streets crying story. I'll
we
try
all
to
have
top you in a minute. But tell me about
I was
actually
not-
meeting her.
So to cut a long story short, she was coming to Dublin. She was getting the gold medal from the Philosophical Society in Trinity, and I did ask a friend who's in the know. I was like, "What is she? Wow, where?" Anyway, so I was very kindly invited along to their dinner, and I did a year later get to sit down and have dinner with her. With there was 8 other people there, but in my head it was
You
it
and
was a
Amy.
romantic.
It was just you and Amy
double
Poehler
date.
on
Yeah,
a date,
I mean
yeah.
a date just with the
I
two
get
of us.
that.
And are we allowed to say what you had given up in
Oh, yeah.
order to?
Oh yeah, that's important.
This makes me sound even more desperate. All my stories are, I'm quite desperate in all of them. It was a funny thing. Myself and my husband were going to Monaco for St. Paddy's Day party.
Yes, you do. Monaco for a Paddy's Day party.
Invited by Prince Albert. I was like,
In the
I want to
palace.
have dinner
In the
with
palace.
Amy.
Palace. Yeah.
I tried to go to the parade in London with my children. Lash and rain. Carry on. Monaco, the palace. I'm not bitter or jealous.
It's important that I frighten Amy Poehler and attempt to cup her face and hold her hand over dinner.
So you didn't go?
I did. I did both. I just masterminded that I went the next day and was a little bit late, but I did. Yeah.
And were you
she
able to
was
talk
great.
to her? Was it?
I was. It was a really surreal moment like that. Like, you know, you meet these people in your life, and I was just conscious of not, because I'd heard really funny earlier in the day when she got in her medal that. That does make me laugh. That outside in Trinity, the people were kind of like doing sketches in front of her and everything. I was like, that must be mad for her.
But also fantastic to have people do your sketches and do your stuff back to you, right? I mean,
I don't think they were her sketches. I think they were just
totally different. Totally different.
So different.
Get away from me, please. Yeah.
But
did you try out your friend's homage on her as a matter?
No. Yes, did you quote any friends?
Oh my God, I have this funny show. You may never have seen it.
It would have been good to quote some friends to Amy Poehler.
Could
Say,
you
why weren't you
imagine?
in that?
Yeah. No, I just sat and stared at her. It was great for me. It was very uncomfortable for her, but I had a great time.
When you were walking the streets bawling in LA,
Yeah, I've done that a lot. That wasn't specific to the Amy Poehler
the
thing.
Tears of a clown, lads. The tears of a clown.
That's exactly it.
There's a lot of rejection in our business, isn't there?
What was your walking the streets bawling?
God, my walking the streets. I went to Montreal Comedy Festival, which is known as Just for Laughs, and it's quite a big deal to get asked to go to Just for Laughs, and people build it up really into a really big thing. Like if you get to go to Just for Laughs, you've made it. I mean, you know, you just go on stage, be funny, and you're the next Jerry Seinfeld, and you're going to get a sitcom. That's not true. It's absolutely not true. Anyway, I went with 4 other people, and we did a show called O Comics, and it was on a Monday night. Monday night is notoriously not a night to do comedy. Anyway, we had what I would describe as a shockingly awful show. I blame it on the fact that they're French speakers first and English speakers second in Montreal. But nevertheless, you know, it was depressing. And we went back to our hotels. We made the best of it. But we hit the bar very hard that night, as you do when you're young. And the next day, I woke really, you know, the hangover from hell and depressed because we were leaving. And so I said, right, I'm going into town. I'm going into town to buy shoes because that's the only thing. That's the only thing that can save this situation now. And I went downtown Montreal looking for shoes. I did a half an hour of that, didn't spot any shoes. And I thought, right, I'm going back to the hotel. And I put my hand out to hail a cab. But as I did it, I hit somebody. And I went, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And it was Billy Connolly. I said, Billy Connolly, what are you doing here? And he kind of laughed at me. He said, well, I'm actually shooting a movie up the road. What are you doing here? So I said, would you believe I'm here for Just for Laughs? I'm a comic. And he said, how's it going for you? And I said, I'm this close to becoming an accountant. And we had a really lovely conversation. And I went back to my hotel room really happy. And I thought, well, maybe that's what I came to Montreal for, just to meet Billy Connolly. And then I headed out to the airport with my bag. And as I was standing in the queue to get on the plane, Billy Connolly was 3 people ahead of me in the queue, and he turned around to me and he said, you're stalking me now. Touch of the Amy Poehlers. But anyway, as it happened, we went through, and him and I went down to the gate together, and we went and we had a cup of tea and we chatted and we became absolutely best friends. We were as thick as thieves until he went into first class. And I went down the back of the plane. But I said to him as we parted, as he went left for first class and I went right for the back, I said, you do realise that if this plane goes down, I won't get a mention. It'll be all about you. I'll be Richie Valens from La Bamba down the back and you'll be Buddy Holly up the front. And he laughed, and it was the only laugh that I got in Montreal. So, lovely. Fiona, actually, I must get to you because I feel like I haven't had a chance to talk to you yet. Your beginning in the industry is really interesting because...
Yeah.
Because of who...
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. Mostly it's because of who your company was, right?
Yeah, well, it was, I mean, incredibly lucky looking back on it now. You know, we were talking earlier about how much luck, you know, and kind of coincidence plays a part in these things. I went to work for Hot Press when I was 18 with the intention of writing about music because I loved music and I liked writing, and I thought this would be an interesting way to spend a couple of years. And just by sheer chance, the people who were working in Hot Press, and we all joined around the same time. Arthur Matthews came in as art director.
Arthur Matthews of Term and Feckin.
Arthur Matthews of Term and Feckin.
Writer of Father Ted.
Graham Linehan of South County
co-writer.
Dublin, who was about 12, I think, when he joined Hot Press. I mean, he was younger than I was, and I was only 18. So And a brilliant guy, I don't know if you know him, Paul Woodfull, who
Indeed,
sometimes trades as Ding Dong Denny O'Reilly.
Hilarious man.
Yeah, and a great musician. And he came in, and there were a bunch of very funny people. Declan Lynch, who would be well known to a lot of people as well, he was there at the time.
So it's back to the team thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and we just started, while we were producing the magazine, riffing, like making each other laugh, coming up with funny stuff. And Paul came up with a band called the Joshua Trio, which was a U2 tribute act.
Yeah, I remember.
And we used to do Tuesday nights in the Bagot Inn. And when I say we, it turned into a kind of a company, and we would do bits of stand-up stupid things. He'd stand up and do a weather forecast, and it was all very unformatted. I used to do backing vocals with the Joshua Trio, much to Deirdre O'Kane's amusement.
I never knew you were a singer, love.
I never said I was. And not a lot of people know this, that we used to do in the Bagot Inn was when we were changing over between acts, Arthur Matthews used to put a dog collar on, stand up on the stage and say, "Hello, my name is Father Ted Crilly, and tonight I'm collecting for..." And then he would come up with these ridiculous charities. I mean, I do remember one which was to provide textbooks in the Irish language for Africa. And this was a huge project.
That is just amazing. But
yeah,
it's interesting too, because he developed a character first.
The character came first,
which
yeah.
Then was
and actually it was funny because most people don't know about this. At the time, Arthur is just one of life's geniuses. And he used to travel a lot between Ireland and the UK. And he would be on his own. And he would get on a plane, sit beside a stranger and introduce himself as Father Ted Crilly. Just to kind of see how people would react to sitting beside a priest who just kept talking to them the whole time.
It's such a good way to develop a character.
I'm convinced now that all over the UK there must be people going, "What? Father Ted Crilly, hang on." And because they have these memories of meeting a completely different version of
Arthur
Father
told
Ted
me
Crilly.
a story. He also had lots of, I think he had quite a number of religious people in his family. Did he have priests or uncles, I think? He told me that he was watching a Prince concert with one of his uncles who was a priest. I hope I'm allowed to tell this story, but nevertheless, he was watching this Prince concert with his uncle who's a priest, and there was total silence in the room for the duration of the Prince concert. And after a while, his uncle just said, "What the hell is going on in his head?" Which is just a little insight. A little insight. So that was an amazing beginning. Did anybody have objections? I think family support is important when you say you want to be an actor or a comic. Did anyone object to you guys?
I mean, I wasn't going into performing, but I had done 2 years of King's Inn and had been kind of well on. And
King's Inn studying law?
Studying
And
law.
you went into comedy, producing?
Yeah, and so when I left that because I'd got a job as a director's assistant on a 12-week feature film, I think my dad did have a couple of months with his head in his hands going. And I had said, of course, I'd take a year out to see how it goes, and that was the end of that. So, there was a little bit of despair there, for sure.
Yeah, bound to be. I mean, you'd gotten yourself into King's Inn.
I think because we all sort of fell into it through different accidents. There was no kind of big reveal.
No.
There was no day. You didn't kind of come home the last day of the leaving and put the books down and go, "Now I'm into comedy." I mean, I still kind of will say to my mother, "Oh, I'm doing this, I'm writing this play or I'm writing this script." And my mother will go, "How much are you getting for that?" And you go, "Nothing." And she go, "But why would you be doing that if you're not getting paid?" Actually, I kind of wish somebody had said to me, by the way, and this is completely true. I was talking to, I'm going to drop a little name here, Jim Sheridan, only a couple of weeks ago. And
Jim Sheridan, the Oscar-nominated film director.
Jim Sheridan, has Oscars. And he was saying the same thing I was, which 90% of our work never gets produced. And that means you never get paid for it, obviously.
So don't go into the business for money. There's a lot of graft, isn't there?
It's a huge amount of graft, a huge amount of speculation, and very little accumulation. But sure, we've the laugh along the way.
Sure isn't it, guys? And we've so many shoes, Deirdre.
It is lovely when they get together. My favourite parent reaction that I ever heard was Sanjeev Bhaskar, who's the actor who was in The Kumars at 41. He said that when he told his father that he wanted to be an actor, his father said, "It's pronounced doctor." That was one of my personal favourite reactions. But yeah, the writing, we all write. For me, the getting into the headspace, my friend comedian Sean Locke said to me recently, and we were talking about writing, and he said, Dee, writing's like fishing. You just sit and wait until something comes.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that.
Yeah, there
me.
is. There is. And then, I mean, at the same time, I think my philosophy is always just you just have to do it. I think, like, just get it down. You can always edit it. You can always change it. But I think if you become consumed with the fear of everything that that it won't work or that it won't be good enough, you will never write anything.
Exactly.
So you
just start
it, and you can always improve on it. And then I don't know. I mean, if you're trying to write your sense of humor, you just have to be true to that as well and go, well, what do I think is funny? Do I think it's funny? And I think it always has to feel natural. Like with most things, if you try and push something too much, it's not going to feel authentic. It's not going to be authentic. And I think if it comes from the heart and if it's stuff that you really, really like, then I think that is the most important place to start.
Yeah, and a lot of it is just facing the page.
Do it. Just do it.
Fiona,
exactly.
Go on, clap if you like. Fiona, I think you're one of the most prolific writers I've ever known. You are really extraordinary. Your output is huge.
Well, I mean, it's partly because I did start in journalism, so you
you've
don't
got
have the
discipline.
luxury of
sorry,
discipline. Nothing came to me today. You know,
No, right. You've got a deadline is a great thing.
You have to do it.
A deadline is a great
you do
thing.
have to
I
do
have to
it.
say, I often book gigs because I know I won't write unless I know and I have to get up. Yeah, so deadline.
Yeah. But I mean, I just,
That's good training, right?
I just like, and I know it actually sounds mad. It probably is mad. I just let people into my head and let them talk to each other. And if it's funny and if it's amusing me, I'll put it down on the page. And like that actually sounds like it's a kind of an analogy for something. It isn't.
Well, that
is
means you're
literally
creating
what I do.
characters in your head and you're letting the characters talk to each other.
Yeah. Well, it's much more interesting than talking to myself.
Yeah, I think that's a common thread as well. I think the people who are successful and who are still doing it, I think tenacity is one of those things that's just the people who just don't give up and keep going. And what I would say kind of from the producing side of it is comedy is hard, and actually it's the hardest. I think that if you're doing pure drama or if you did, there's a lot more leeway, it's more open to interpretation and people can rub their chin and, bring a lot of their own experiences to it. Whereas comedy, there's a basic bar. You go into a cinema and you're 5 minutes in and people are either laughing or they're not. And that's a very technical thing to do. It's
Absolutely.
not something...
And if you're doing it live on stage, you're dead.
And
That's
like
why
that
they use the
for
phrase
stand-up,
dying on stage.
Yeah,
you
which
die.
is, I think, one of, the bravest things to do is just go out and stand with a mic. But I think, and I know this is getting off the funny side of this, but there's a massively technical, disciplined part of that. And it's the same, I think, with acting. If you can comedy act, I think you can act,
I couldn't agree more. If you can comedy act, you can do anything, in my opinion. It's interesting because I have heard that a lot of, award-winning dramatic actors can't do funny.
Yeah.
They don't know how to
and
There's, I think, as women writing in comedy, and I kind of hate to say this because it's a bit depressing, but there is an additional... Pressure isn't the right word. There's an expectation that if you're a woman and you're writing comedy, there's a very limited range of topics that you should be writing about. I mean, happily, we seem to have moved past the tell us a joke about your period thing, which dominated the 1980s. And I mean, I just found that so destroying.
There was a period, where I think there was female comedy was cringeworthy. And I wasn't around. That's before my time.
I know as a
certainly don't
writer,
count
I
it
mean,
now.
I've had meetings with publishers, I've had meetings with filmmakers, various people, television executives down the years. And I am constantly getting pushed to write, you're a mother, write about your kids. Nobody says you're a father, write about your kids.
No,
so
they don't.
You're expected to write about your kids, you're expected to write about your family. We are pushed into narrower perimeters as writers than men are.
A slight counterpoint to that as well, though. I mean, those things are all part of life's rich tapestry. And I think sometimes it seemed to be, to write about kids or family, that's women's stuff and therefore it's lesser comedy. So, I mean, I think it's a balance as well. I think that, I think it's really important as well that you don't apologise. If it's funny, it's funny.
It's rich terrain.
and
it's a
part
lot of
it.
people's
and
lives.
I think it shouldn't be seen, it's often seen as being trivial or being, fluffy or and I think, it's really trying to find the balance of those things.
Okay, listen, before we wrap up, I want to ask you all what your dream job would be if somebody came along. What's the dream, Amy Huberman? Where do you want to be in life?
I do want to be performing my own stuff and continue to be able
as
to
a
write.
stand-up or
No, it is to well, hopefully for the film that Treasure are working with at the moment with me, for that to get made and for to evolve in that way, that you've got a little bit more control, and that you're creating a vehicle that for the stuff that you find funny.
Have you written a part for yourself? I hope you have.
Totally.
The lead, right? Yeah.
I could go. No, yes.
You could think of auditioning Amy Poehler.
Yeah,
Okay,
make
so
her cry.
Fiona, what's your dream job?
Working in Super Value, but being incredibly well paid.
She actually really quite
I
likes
know,
the
I've
idea
always
of just
said that.
sitting there chatting to people.
I'd love
and
to change that 90% not getting produced, 10% getting produced ratio
Yeah.
around. I mean, that would be the dream, you know, and just to write slightly more popular stuff.
You write incredibly popular stuff. My God, I mean, you know, I made the Croke Park reference earlier. You sold more than 70,000 tickets.
Well, you
for
did too,
Dandelion.
love. To be fair, you had part to play in that.
I added something. I like to think. Getting stuff made, it's hard, right? Rebecca, what's your dream producing job?
Comedy musical. I'm still
Really?
waiting to do. Yeah, absolutely.
I want to be.
I'm a really good backing vocalist.
Great. I think we have the perfect team here. My dream could.
Oh my God!
come
I mean,
true out of this.
most comics wanted to be singers, but they can all sing. Every comedian I know
can't.
is pretty good singer, but they weren't good enough.
Yeah.
So they told jokes instead. I mean, that was it. I wanted to be a singer. I didn't want to be a comic. I wanted to be an actress. Everything I wanted to be, I didn't get to do. Anyway, I believe that's all we have got time for. I want to thank my brilliant women for being here today. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause for Amy Huberman, Fiona Looney, Rebecca O'Flanagan. Thank you to you for being an incredible audience. See you next time.